Hi, Scott Tutle, Calhoun County, Michigan, and I shot this buck here on November 18th, 2019, about 9 o'clock in the morning. Gross scored 160 on the nose and net scored 154 and some change. Story behind shooting this buck was sitting out in my tree stand, and the funny story about it is I don't consider myself a buck hunter. I consider myself more of a doe hunter. This is only the second buck I've shot in 18 years. Seen a lot, but I pass a lot, and so I mainly am always looking for big mature does. Well, the night before I was sitting out on stand, and I had a group of does messing around in the tall, thick grass behind me about 100 yards. So didn't get a shot at them that night, so I said the next morning I was going to go sit about 100 yards back behind my primary stand in a stand that I had set up. The stand's been up there for about 2 years, but I never hunt it. I had to stick another stand up, so I stuck it there, and I haven't really touched it in about 2 years. So I decided to hunt that second stand that next morning. And at about 8:45, I had a big doe come through, but she was in chest-high grass, and I couldn't get a clear shot at her. Once she got past me, my shot was over. So I was a little bit frustrated, so I picked up my phone and I jumped online, and I was starting to look at brush hogs on my phone, because I was bound and determined I was going to buy a brush hog and knock down some of that tall grass. And as most hunters do, you look up from your phone about every 30 seconds or so. You look around, you make sure nothing's there. And about the third time I did that, I happened to look over to my left, and there he was standing about 10 yards away on the edge of a creek. And I've never had buck fever before, but it's real, and I got buck fever as soon as I saw this guy. There was no questioning whether he was a shooter or not. I still had my phone in my hand, but he started walking towards me down this creek line, and he was getting closer and closer, and I didn't know what to do with my hand or with my phone, so I just sort of threw my phone inside my jacket. Didn't even put it in a pocket or anything. Luckily it didn't fall out and hit the ground, but I grabbed my gun, and he stopped at about 7 yards in front of me behind a big bush, and he took 2 more steps forward, and he was at 5 yards just on the other side of the creek. My stand's on this side, and he was walking the opposite edge of it. And I put my gun up on him, and my scope was all the way turned up to 9 still from that last doe that came through. But I didn't have time to adjust it. I found his head, and I just moved it down to where I thought about his shoulder would be, and touched it off, and he hunched up, and he took off running straight away from me through the tall grass. I couldn't see him, but I could see the tall grass moving, and then about 60 yards out, the tall grass stopped moving. So we went out and retrieved him, and had no idea that he was as big as he was, but I was pleasantly surprised.
You want to give him a little bit of backstory on that shed?
Yeah, his shed here, actually, we about a mile away from where I shot him, some new property came up for sale in the spring of 2019. So my father-in-law and we went down there to walk that property and see if it was anything worth investing in. And we found a couple sheds down there, and this being one of them. And as soon as we found this, my father-in-law and I looked at each other, and we said, hey, this is a sign, we got to buy this property. So we bought the property, and for 6 months I was showing up off this shed to all my friends and family, and sure enough, that next fall I ended up shooting the same buck on my original property, which was a mile away. But it didn't even dawn on me until the night that I shot him that this was his shed. I was laying in bed about to fall asleep, and the shed popped into my brain, and so I ran downstairs and grabbed it and took it out and held it up next to him, and sure enough, it was his right side. So it was really kind of neat how it all came together with our new property a mile away, finding this shed, and then shooting him on our existing property that fall. But beyond that, we'd never seen the deer before. We didn't have him on any trail cams. None of the neighbors had seen him. Nobody knew the buck existed until we found his shed, and then he showed up the morning that I shot him.